Tie an interesting little wet fly here today. This is called the King of the Waters. Tying these because a couple of different reasons. They're fun to tie, and there's some smallmouth I want to target this next season with wet flies. So there's a series of wet flies I'm going to do on some larger sizes that I think are going to end up being pretty decent smallmouth flies. And the King of the Waters is one of them. It's a basic little wet fly with the exception that it has a collar on it instead of a throat, which a lot of the wet flies do. This collar happens to be over the wing instead of under it. And the wing is made out of gray mallard flank, which you could use, and I'll talk about a little bit more, some bronze mallard if you want a dressier fly. These are all going to be tied as a fishing fly, so they're just going to be put together so that they get the job done. It's a fun fly. This is King of the Waters. I'll get started. Now, to start the King of the Waters, I'm going to go ahead and put my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad 3399 in a size 6. Also, before I get started on this, I would like to just give a little shout out or a thank you to Rick Sakura. I hope I pronounced that last name correctly. Rick sent some pictures of some panfish earlier this summer that he caught on the mini hopper. Mini hopper is a kind of a foam hair hopper that I tied, panfish fly that I tied, did a video on a while ago. There will be a link, I think, right up there, if not, down in the description. He had some great success with it, and I just wanted to say thanks for sharing. I'm going to debarb the hook, and then I'm going to attach my thread. Because the body on this is a red floss, I'm going to start with a white. This is a Danville 6/0 white, so that the body doesn't get darker in the water. Now, I'm tying on a size 6 hook because a number of wet flies that I'm going to be tying over the next few months, I want to fish this next season for smallmouth around here in my waters, and 6s and 4s are going to be a little bit better size. Advance my thread to just at the point of the hook. Then I'm going to tie in the tinsel for our tag. The tag is a gold tinsel. I'm using a Danville size 14 silver and gold Mylar tinsel. I'm going to actually put a little bit more wax on my thread here, just to make certain that I'm gripping the material well. I'm going to attach the tinsel with the silver side up, and I'm going to pull it to the left so that it is the full length of the body. That way I'm minimizing any bump in the back here. Put in 3 wraps just to secure that. Turn the hook over, and I'm going to wrap 4 wraps down in touching turns or just slightly overlapping, and then 4 wraps back up to make the tag. You want to try and make certain you minimize your thread wraps back at the back end here, because you don't want to produce a bump. So the tail for the King of the Waters is just regular old mallard, gray mallard flank. Now I'm using for the tail and the wing, I've got just this package of loose mallard flank that I'm going to use. Certainly for the wing, if you wanted to, you could, if you wanted to tie some of these more for show, to frame or to give away or something, you could use some bronze mallard, I think, in the wing. just to have a nicer look to it. But these are going to be fishing flies, so I'm not that concerned. My chief concern is I don't want a wing that is going to be, curved off in one direction or another, or at an odd angle, which ends up affecting the casting and or the fishing of the fly. That said, all you really need is to just get just a few barbs of some gray mallard. I like to, when you collect these, a lot of times they'll all kind of fall in with the natural curve that they had. This isn't doing it, but what you can do, if they're all together in a curve, wet your fingers just a little bit and kind of roll all the barbs around in your fingers. They'll spread them out a little bit. Just makes them look a little bit fuller. Trim the excess the length of the body. I'm going to use the same 14 Mylar tinsel for the rib. You could go with a 16 or 18 for the rib on this. It would be a little bit thin, and for me anyway, on this size hook. If you wanted to. If you didn't have the 14, you could do that. Again, I want that on the underside of the hook shank. Pull it back the length of the body. The body on this is a red floss. I'm using a Danville 4-strand Rayon in red. Because of the size of this hook, I'm going to use all 4 strands. You'll have to be a little bit careful when we wrap these in so that it doesn't kind of go in as a cord and they all flatten out a little bit. But this will give me a little bit chunkier body. Again, bring that up under the thread, under the hook shank. Pull that to the left so that it is the length of the body. Get a wrap in there to secure that. Put some more wax on my thread. And I will advance my thread forward. I want to advance this in touching turns. You could even counter twist your thread in a counterclockwise direction to flatten it if you wanted to on this step. I don't think that it's really needed. The floss is going to be thick enough, I should say even dense enough, to fill in any of those little grooves around the thread, still give us a smooth body. Make certain you end up about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. This is a point that a lot of tyers have difficulty with in terms of they get too close to the eye and the resulting fly ends up crowding the eye. And even with all the flies that I've tied, occasionally this happens to me still. You're better off to err on the side of caution and be a little bit further back from the eye than you are closer to it. So just keep that in mind. So now I'm going to apply my floss. I want to make certain that the first wrap is covering up any thread wraps or that would be showing. And then after that, I will apply the rib with 5 evenly spaced wraps. saw, I lost tension on that tinsel there on that first attempt, and all the wraps came unraveled. That's fine. That happens sometimes, especially this time of year. We're getting into the drier weather and hands are a little bit slippery. There's not as much grip on them. So if that happens, just unwrap it and wrap it in again. Very important, just take your time with these things. So with my body all wrapped in, I'm going to attach my black thread, and this is just a black Danville 6/0, and this is just to finish it off. A little bit of wax on it. Tie the tag in as well as trap in the white thread. Trim both of those. And my black thread is secured. Now the hackle on this is actually put on top of the wing. So my wing's going to go on, and then I'm going to have a number of turns of some brown hackle. In that case, I like to be a little bit further behind than just an eye length, because I've got to tie in the wing here and then also have room for 3 to 4 wraps of the hackle then to tie them off and make the head. So you can go back a little bit more than normally would if I was putting in a throat and a wing on top. Again, the wing is just a gray mallard. The difficulty here is finding a feather in all of this that is going to work for what we're going to do here, because what I want is I want a feather that has a nice even tip across here. I'm going to cut a section out in the center, and then I'm going to fold around the rachis here all those barbs to more or less make a wing like this. It can be kind of tricky looking around and finding the right feather for that. So you're going to have to, experiment a little bit. I'm going to go with this one. It's a little bit darker gray. The packets of mallard flank have some nice light gray feathers with a lighter grizzly pattern or banding on them, and then some that are darker. It's up to you. I don't think it really makes that much difference, especially for a fishing fly. But what I'm going to do is, after I select the feather, the idea is to get this section here and this section here and a little bit beyond together to form the wing. I'm just going to snip out the center part of the rachis. And then, like I said, holding that, I'm just going to kind of fold those downward. And the idea is to, easier to do when I don't have to try and describe it. There we go. The idea is to get kind of a post of mallard flank material for the wing. It doesn't have to be super pretty or super elegant or anything like that. Again, this is a fishing fly. As I mentioned, if you wanted to, you could use some bronze mallard to dress that up just a little bit if you want. But massage that a little bit. You can get a pretty nice little wing out of that. It's a little bit easier than trying to match them up. I want the tips to go about halfway down the tail. A little pinch and loop. Make certain that your anchoring of these is staying back a good eye length behind the eye of the hook. Trim away the excess. Now, it's not a perfectly matched wing. It won't look just great on both sides, but it'll fish very well. So a little bit more wax on the thread. I'm going to bring my thread forward to the eye and back, and all I'm trying to do is get those butt ends lashed down and make a little bit more, I should say a little more of a smoother surface for palmering of our hackle. There you go. Hackle on this is just a brown hen hackle, or at least I'm using a hen hackle. This is off a hen saddle. You could use a shorter hen that's a little bit webbier if you want. You could probably even get away with some rooster saddle, as long as there's nice barbules on it, so that you got a nice kind of webby feather. It's not real stiff like a dry fly. Peel away the excess and the fluff. Holding it by the tip, I'm going to stroke the barbs in the opposite direction. I'm going to trim away the tip so that I have a nice little triangle as a anchor. Wrap that in, going down towards the eye and back. I want to make certain it's wrapped in real well. A little bit more wax. Get my hackle pliers out and I'll palmer this in 3 or 4 turns. Stroking the barbs back, trying to keep those out of the way so I don't trap any when I'm wrapping this in. This one actually I'm probably going to put in 5 turns if I can keep a hold of the hackle. You could go sparser. If I were tying these in, say, 8s and 10s or 12s, I probably would only put 3 or maybe at the most 4. But like I said, this is a bigger fly. I want it to have a little bit more of a pronounced profile, so I'm going to put in just a little bit of a 5th wrap here. Notice that I'm right about down to the eye of the hook, and that's fine, because I will lash this in just behind the eye of the hook, trim off the excess, stroking these back. I'll now, right behind the eye of the hook, start forming the head. This is going to cover it up as well as give me that taper down from the body to the eye of the hook without crowding the eye too much. It also pushes those barbules in the hackle in a rearward direction. I'm going to counterclockwise spin my thread and flatten it out to put in my whip finish. If you've got some of those barbs that are kind of coming up against the thread, at this point, moisten your fingers a little bit and just stroke them back out of the way. Just makes it easier so that you don't trap any of those when you're doing your whip finish. Got an 8-turn whip finish. Trim away the excess. I'll put a half a drop of head cement on both sides of the head here. That will, fly tight will soak in real well down inside those thread wraps to secure that. I'll come back in a minute or two and put some black lacquer on that to seal it up and make it look nice. And our King of the Waters is done. Like I said, it's a pretty fly. A number of your wet flies don't have throats, but they have palmered hackles that are usually under the wings. The wings will sometimes come up and enclose around the hackle. But this one was kind of interesting because it was on top of it. So there's some different techniques there for Doing the wet fly as well as the wing with the gray mallard on the King of the Waters here. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.